Well, I've always been sort of an optimist about what we, the human race, are able to create, the good that we're able to create. But Jurassic Park, the whole theme of Jurassic Park was we stood on the shoulders of giants to create something that everybody else had thought up before us, and now we've unleashed it on the world and it's starting to chase us and eat us.
What if I told you that Steven Spielberg, the man who gave us Jaws, E.T. and Jurassic Park, actually hates some of his most famous movies? I'm talking about a director who's made over $10 billion at the box office, won 3 Oscars, and basically invented the modern blockbuster, openly admitting he wishes he'd never made certain films. After digging through decades of interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, and industry insider accounts, I've uncovered 7 movies that Spielberg himself calls his biggest failures. And some of these might shock you, because one of them is probably sitting in your DVD collection right now. But here's the thing that'll blow your mind. These failures taught Spielberg lessons that directly led to his greatest masterpieces. So buckle up, because we're about to pull back the curtain on Hollywood's most successful director's darkest secrets. Number 7, 1941. Let's start with a movie that almost ended Spielberg's career before it really began. And it wasn't what you'd expect. Picture this. It's 1979. Spielberg just delivered 2 massive hits with Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He's on top of the world, Hollywood's golden boy who can do no wrong. So what does he do next? He decides to make a comedy. The movie was called 1941, and Spielberg himself later said, "It was like I'd committed a war crime." Now you might be thinking, how bad could it really be? Well, imagine spending $35 million in 1979 money, that's over $140 million today, on what was supposed to be a hilarious World War II comedy, only to watch it bomb so spectacularly that critics called it an expensive disaster, and audiences stayed away in droves. But here's where it gets really interesting. Spielberg revealed in a later interview that he originally wanted to make 1941 as a musical. He even worked with John Williams on song ideas. But he said, "I didn't have the courage to go through with it." Can you imagine? A Steven Spielberg musical about World War II. Instead, he played it safe with traditional comedy, and it backfired completely. The failure of 1941 taught Spielberg a crucial lesson. Never make a movie just because you think you should be able to. He learned to trust his instincts and only pursue projects where he felt a genuine personal connection. Number 6, Hook. Now here's where things get really shocking. There's a movie that millions of people consider a childhood classic that made over $300 million worldwide and that regularly appears on Best Family Films lists. Steven Spielberg absolutely hates it. I'm talking about Hook from 1991, and when I say he hates it, I mean he's gone on record saying, "I so don't like that movie."
I should never have messed with the archive of my own work, and I don't recommend anybody really do that. Your film, all our movies are a kind of measuring, it's sort of a signpost of where we were when we made them, and what the world was like, what the world was receiving when we got those stories out there. So I really regret having.
Think about that for a second. This is a film starring Robin Williams, Dustin Hoffman, and Julia Roberts. It had a $70 million budget, groundbreaking sets, and a story about Peter Pan growing up. On paper, it should have been perfect Spielberg material. So what went wrong? During production, Spielberg felt completely disconnected from the story. He later admitted he had no faith in the screenplay and felt insecure throughout the entire filming process.
Air is let out of the movie with it. People aren't able to see it, just 2 theaters. But when we did go wide, people did come, which was good.
He described feeling like he was making it up as he went along in the worst possible way. But here's the fascinating part. Audiences loved it. Kids especially went crazy for Hook. It became a cultural phenomenon. Yet Spielberg still considers it one of his biggest professional regrets because he felt like he was just going through the motions. This experience taught him something vital. Commercial success means nothing if you're not emotionally invested in your work. From that point forward, Spielberg made a promise to himself to only make movies that genuinely excited him as a storyteller. Number 5, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. You know what's worse than making a bad movie? Making a bad sequel to one of the greatest films ever made. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom should have been a slam dunk. The original Raiders of the Lost Ark was a masterpiece that redefined adventure films. Harrison Ford was back, the budget was bigger, and expectations were through the roof. Instead, Spielberg created what he later called too dark, too subterranean, and much too horrific. He went even further, saying, "There's not an ounce of my own personal feeling in Temple of Doom." But wait, it gets worse. The movie was so violent and disturbing that it literally created the PG-13 rating. The MPAA had to invent a new category because Temple of Doom was too intense for PG, but not quite R-rated. Spielberg felt enormous pressure to make the sequel different from the original, but in trying to avoid repeating himself, he lost what made Indiana Jones special in the first place. The heart, the fun, the sense of adventure, it all got buried under darkness and shock value. The director later admitted he was going through personal issues during production, including his divorce, and that emotional turmoil bled into the film in all the wrong ways. This failure taught Spielberg that sequels aren't just about being different. They're about capturing what made people fall in love with the original while finding new ways to surprise them. Number 4. The Lost World, Jurassic Park. Here's something that might surprise you. Spielberg considers The Lost World, Jurassic Park, one of his biggest mistakes, and it has nothing to do with the dinosaurs. After the massive success of the original Jurassic Park, Spielberg felt overconfident. He thought he could just recapture lightning in a bottle without putting in the same level of care and attention. He later admitted, "You lose both ways when you try to split the difference between innovation and repeating past successes." The problem wasn't the special effects or the action sequences. It was that Spielberg approached it like a business transaction instead of a creative endeavor. He was so focused on delivering what he thought audiences wanted that he forgot to ask himself what story he actually wanted to tell. The movie made over $600 million worldwide, but Spielberg knew he'd compromised his artistic integrity. He described the experience as going through the motions and said it taught him that commercial pressure should never override creative vision. This regret fundamentally changed how Spielberg approaches sequels and franchise filmmaking. He realized that just because you can make something doesn't mean you should. Number 3, E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. Now we get to a regret that's particularly painful because it involves one of Spielberg's greatest masterpieces, E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. For the 20th anniversary re-release in 2002, Spielberg made a decision that he now calls one of his biggest mistakes ever. He digitally removed guns from federal agents and replaced them with walkie-talkies, and it sounds minor, right? Wrong. Spielberg later said, "I should have never messed with the archives of my own work, and I don't recommend anyone do that. I really regret having that out there."
E.T. was a film that I was sensitive to the fact that the federal agents were approaching a bunch of kids with their firearms exposed, and I thought I would change the guns into walkie-talkies. But E.T. and that was because years had gone by and I had changed my own views.
But here's why this regret cuts so deep. E.T. was a perfect film. It captured a specific moment in time, reflected the world as it was in 1982, and resonated with audiences precisely because it felt authentic to that era. By changing it, Spielberg wasn't just altering a movie, he was rewriting history. He was essentially saying that his original vision wasn't good enough, that it needed to be sanitized for modern audiences. The backlash was swift and brutal. Fans felt betrayed, critics accused him of selling out, and Spielberg realized he'd made a fundamental error. Great art should reflect its time, not be constantly updated to match current sensibilities. This experience taught him to trust his original instincts and never second-guess completed work. Some things are meant to be preserved exactly as they were created. Number 2, the color purple. Here's where Spielberg's regrets get really complex because we're talking about The Color Purple, a film that earned 11 Oscar nominations and is considered by many to be a masterpiece. But Spielberg himself admits he was the wrong director for the job. He openly acknowledged his limitations in handling the more intimate and sexually honest scenes from Alice Walker's novel. He said, "Perhaps I was the wrong director to acquit some of the more sexually honest encounters." The problem wasn't lack of talent, it was lack of life experience. Spielberg was a white male director trying to tell the story of black women in the early 1900s South, dealing with themes of abuse, sexuality, and survival that were outside his personal experience. He played it safe, pursuing a PG-13 rating when the story demanded more mature treatment. He held back when he should have leaned in. He was timid when the material called for boldness. Despite the critical acclaim and commercial success, Spielberg knew he'd compromised the story's power. He learned that sometimes the most respectful thing a director can do is recognize when a project needs someone else's voice. This regret taught him to be more selective about projects and to ensure he had a genuine personal connection to the stories he chose to tell. Number 1. Jaws. Our final regret isn't about a bad movie, it's about the unintended consequences of a great one. Jaws is arguably Spielberg's most influential film. It invented the summer blockbuster, made people afraid to go in the water, and launched his career into the stratosphere. It also led to the systematic slaughter of sharks worldwide. Spielberg has repeatedly expressed deep regret about this, saying, "I truly, and to this day, regret the decimation of the shark population, caused by people hunting sharks after the movie's popularity." The film was so effective at portraying sharks as monsters that it fundamentally changed public perception. Shark populations plummeted as people went on killing sprees, thinking they were protecting beaches and swimmers. But here's what makes this regret so profound. Spielberg never intended for this to happen. He was just trying to make a scary movie about a killer shark. He had no idea his film would have real-world environmental consequences. This taught him about the responsibility that comes with creating powerful, influential art. He's since become a vocal advocate for shark conservation, trying to undo the damage his masterpiece inadvertently caused. So there you have it. 7 regrets from the man who basically invented modern Hollywood. From career-threatening comedies to environmental disasters. From beloved classics he can't stand to watch to masterpieces he wishes he'd never touched. But here's the thing that makes Spielberg truly great. He learned from every single one of these failures. 1941 taught him to trust his instincts. Hook showed him the importance of emotional investment. Temple of Doom proved that darkness without heart is just emptiness. The Lost World reminded him that commercial pressure kills creativity. The E.T. re-edit taught him to respect his original work. The color purple showed him the limits of his own perspective. And Jaws taught him about the responsibility that comes with creating powerful art. These regrets didn't destroy Spielberg. They made him the director we know today. They led directly to masterpieces like Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, and Munich. They taught him that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the foundation of it. The next time you watch a Spielberg film, remember, you're not just watching the work of a genius. You're watching the work of someone who learned from his mistakes, embraced his failures, and used them to create something even better. We are committed to releasing 2 videos a week. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more film lore.